Can Israel credibly pull this off? Should this plan be believed?
I mean, Kailey, I doubt it. And it looks like our government doubts it because, the Biden administration has been asking the Israelis for consultations on this plan that they have to launch a new round of offensives or an offensive into Rafah. They already have starvation in the north. People are on the brink of starvation and then probably already starving. I know they've reported some deaths of children. And so, the focus should be on getting humanitarian aid in. Our government has said that on getting the hostages out, on coming to agreement on a ceasefire, which allows both of those things to happen, and then ultimately getting to a peaceful resolution. But I think that the idea that the Israelis could somehow clear 1 million people out of the way of a massive military operation is inconceivable to me.
Well, we know that U.S. Officials, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, did talk virtually with their Israeli counterparts today. According to the readout of the meeting, they said they share the same objective to get Hamas out of defeated in Rafah, but the U.S. side expressed its concerns with various courses of action. To what degree, Evelyn, do you think the Israelis actually are heeding those concerns or will heed them?
Well, that's the big question. I do think, Kailey, that it is helpful that former President Trump did indicate that he's concerned that Israel is suffering when it comes to the public perception of Israel and public support for Israel. And though he said, get the mission done quickly, which could be interpreted in a lot of different ways, he was warning Israel that, they need to pay attention to the United States and what the perception is here. So it is possible that the Israelis will alter their military plans. I certainly hope that they do. Again, the focus should be on saving innocent lives right now.
Well, of course, there's domestic pressures for the Israelis that factor in here, not just the international pressures coming from the U.S. and other allies. Over the weekend, tens of thousands of people took to the streets calling for a new government in Israel. It was something that Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about yesterday in a televised address. Just take a listen to what he said on the matter.
The calls for elections now, in the middle of the war, just before the victory, will paralyze Israel for at least 6 months, 8 months in my estimation. They will paralyze the negotiations for the release of our hostages. They will bring the war to an end before the completion of its objectives. And the first to bless it will be Hamas, and that says everything.
So I would say, Evelyn, that it doesn't seem he's too supportive of this idea, but still it does speak to pressure that may be on him with the Israeli public. To what extent do you think that changes the way that he moves forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think without pressure, he would probably try to drag out the war because he's not interested in holding new elections because Netanyahu is likely to face a resounding electoral defeat. And that also has implications for him in terms of his legal battle to keep himself out of, being indicted and put in prison. So at the moment, however, this pressure, you mentioned the demonstrations. There have been 2 nights of demonstrations now, hostage families and supporters and Israelis essentially saying, we need to focus on, again, getting the hostages released and moving to elections. I don't think that you can, move to elections immediately. It is true that the military campaign needs to, the war, this phase of the war needs to be brought to an end. It's very difficult. Most democracies don't hold elections in the middle of a war like this. Having said that, this will put pressure on him to demonstrate that he's taking action rather than trying to stretch this out to benefit himself. And I think we will have to keep pressure on Netanyahu to do what's best for the state of Israel, for the people of Israel, and frankly, for the innocent civilians in Gaza. And it's a hard balancing act, but Israel can continue to fight Hamas. It just has to do it in a way that's militarily more precise. And that's what our government's trying to say.
But there also is the question, Evelyn, of if Israel is only actively fighting Hamas or actively fighting in Gaza. Just today, we had reports from Iranian and Syrian state media about an Israeli airstrike on Iran's embassy compound in Syria, which reportedly killed not just one top military commander, but a second general and 5 officers, according to the Associated Press. Should we be concerned about an escalation here?
Well, I think that our government, we've heard it from the National Security Advisor, from Jake Sullivan and others, there's definitely been a fear of this war widening. And so these strikes do raise that fear or kind of make one think about the danger that the war will expand. However, such strikes in Syria have been normal in the sense that Israel has taken this kind of military action for years now. So I don't think that this strike alone in Syria will be something that broadens the war. The other thing is we have seen that when we came close to having the war expand to include the Iranian state itself, that Iran warned its proxies not to go too far, because Iran itself does not want to get involved in a direct war right now with Israel. I think Iran feels that the best option for them is to have their proxies continue to fight Israel.
Well, when we think about the wider picture of the Middle East, Evelyn, we also got news over the weekend out of Turkey, where the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's ruling party was dealt a number of blows in municipal elections. Should we be concerned about what's happening in Turkey and how it changes the landscape here, or is it just kind of an idiosyncratic, unique to the domestic issues Erdogan is facing?
Well, Turkey is a really interesting country because, you mentioned it in the context of the Middle East, but it really straddles the Middle East and Europe, right? And under Erdogan, frankly, it's taken more of a Middle Eastern or pro-Middle Eastern turn. Erdogan's been really active frankly, on the issue of the Palestinian people and their rights. He's made his Islamist identity and his Islamist party has been very active in a way that is different from the approach that Turkey has taken in the past when the military was more dominant, a more secular approach. So Erdogan is straddling, as I said, Middle East and Europe. I think the kind of more pro-Western, more democratic forces show that they still have a lot of strength in Turkey. And this does have implications beyond Turkey, because I think all of the kind of strong men around the world and in Europe in particular, and we can add Viktor Orban to this this discussion, they take strength from one another. And when they see, like on the converse, that one of them is suffering from domestic opposition or that they are facing domestic opposition, they also take note of that, and they tend to kind of become less bold. And in Hungary also, Viktor Orban is now being challenged by the opposition with real demonstrations on the street because of a scandal there. So I do think it has real implications beyond Turkey.
Well, and you make an excellent point about how this also factors into the European equation as well. And we know there is an ongoing war on that continent too, Evelyn. On the subject of Ukraine, we did hear from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in an interview yesterday talking about a path forward for aid in the House. He has, though, some what he calls new innovations, this potentially being a loan rather than outright aid that is given, potentially using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's war effort. Are these ideas that maybe sound good in principle but are hard to make reality, or could they work?
I think they could work. And frankly, from the perspective of the Ukrainians and all of us who really want Ukraine to persevere, because it's important for European security, for U.S. security, for the way that we counter China in Asia. So I'm bringing the whole world in here, Kailey. We need to make sure that Ukraine can remain undefeated. In fact, that Ukraine becomes successful. I have a piece in The Hill that ran yesterday. It's still up on the website. It's basically arguing that there are a lot of factors that indicate that Ukraine is not only winning, but will come out victorious in the end, provided we give them this assistance. The frozen assets are $330 billion. If Ukraine could get that, it will for sure outlast Russia in this war and likely prevail. And also, it'll provide a nice glide path for them into European Union membership, because they will no longer be a poor state trying to join the Union.